Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to another video. So I did a Psych2Go reaction a little while back and there were a lot more responses than I initially expected. Well, obviously Psych2Go is a huge channel talking about mental health, psychology concepts, aiming to educate and to inform. What I also found was that there was just a huge division in opinions about Psych2Go. Some people loved it, some people hated it, some people said they were giving inaccurate information, that it was ableist, and some people said it literally saved their life. Well, in the vein of talking about Psych2Go saving someone's life, they have a video that they published maybe 3 months ago about 8 things not to say to someone with suicidal thoughts. Now, obviously, suicide is something that I've had to have training in, and this is something that I've had to talk with clients with about either issues of self-harm or thoughts of killing themselves. Really challenging topics. So I am interested to hear what they have to say about this particular topic, about what they think would be helpful and not helpful to say to someone who is struggling with suicidal thoughts. I have not watched this video before, so I haven't done any prep work in that regard, so I'm coming at this with fresh eyes. So we're going to dig into this video and talk about what I think about their suggestions about 8 things not to say to people with suicidal thoughts. So looking at their initial description, they say, talking to someone struggling with suicidal thoughts can feel overwhelming. You want to help, but you might not know what to say. That's true. That's a very common issue. A lot of people, especially clinicians, when we're just starting out, I don't think you should ever be fully comfortable with the idea of working with someone who's dealing with suicidal thoughts. But yeah, this is really difficult to approach and be willing to broach from the beginning. So yes, a lot of training can absolutely be helpful. I think this addresses a very common fear that we might say the wrong thing and push someone over the edge. I guess what they're trying to accomplish with this video is to take some of the guesswork out of that. So they say, unfortunately, some common phrases meant to comfort can actually do more harm than good. So I'll be interested to know what they think those are. In this video, we'll go over 8 things you should avoid saying and explain why they can be unhelpful. More importantly, we'll also share what you can say to offer real support. Okay, that's important. So we'll see what they offer in terms of positively what you should do as well.
Hey Psych2Goers, welcome back to another video. Thanks so much for all of your support. Psych2Go's mission is to make mental health and self-help more accessible to everyone. And in this video, we want to continue the conversation about mental health and suicide awareness. Before we begin, we would like to clarify that these 8 things mentioned in the video are examples meant to guide a supportive conversation. They should not replace the advice of a medical or mental health professional. If you are
I'll also add to that disclaimer that any of the principles that they talk about here or that I talk about here, generally they apply in these situations, but you're always going to come up with exceptions. So do take that with a grain of salt, that one of the most important things when it comes to supporting someone, whether it's with thoughts of suicide or with any other mental health issue or just emotional challenge, is that the relationship matters. That helps give you the information to know whether these things not to say or whether these things to say are actually the right thing. It depends on your relationship with the person.
Or someone close to you is having suicidal thoughts, please don't be afraid to reach out to a professional for help. Suicide can be difficult to talk about, especially when someone reaches out about suicidal thoughts. It takes immense bravery to ask for help. So it's important to keep a few things in mind if you're able to be there for someone who is struggling.
So I'll say, even before they offer any suggestions, that's an important thing to know right off the bat, that this is a very vulnerable thing for someone to share with you. And sometimes just saying that initially, man, that's really hard for anyone to share. Thank you for trusting me with that. That can develop a little bit of empathy, a little bit of relationship, a bit of a foundation for you all to build on, just acknowledging and recognizing that that's a difficult thing for them to come to anybody with.
It's essential that they feel supported, but it's also important that you don't take on more than you can handle if you're not a mental health professional. It may be an emotional and intense conversation, but it's one that can save a life.
And I haven't been in this situation, sorry, I know I'm stopping a lot. I haven't been in this situation where I was not a professional and somebody came to me with that. So I am curious, comment below if you have people who've shared those kinds of thoughts with you and you're not a professional. What did that feel like for you? What were your thoughts that initially went through your mind? Because yeah, those are intense conversations. So I am curious, if you haven't had that kind of training and experience, what it's like for someone to be a part of that conversation with when someone's coming to you with those kinds of concerns.
So, here are 8 things not to say to someone with suicidal thoughts. 1. Don't say, I'd be so hurt if something happened to you. Supporting someone through suicidal thoughts can bring up a lot of fears and emotions. But while these sentiments may come from caring intentions, they turn the focus on yourself rather than the person who is hurting. It's important to listen rather than speak, as difficult as it may be.
Yeah, that's good advice. Don't make it about yourself. Don't make it about my feelings suddenly, because you're shifting the conversation from how they're feeling to how their actions affect you. And a lot of times, if it's coming from a place of guilt or overwhelm, especially when it comes to relationships, you're putting another expectation on them. Oh, even thinking about killing myself is wrong because I'm hurting this person now. And that can really further that hole of hopelessness and defeat that they might be in.
Right now, it's not about you. That being said, at the end of the day, make sure you feel emotionally supported too. It can take a toll to be with someone through such a difficult time. 2, don't say, "It'll get better." While creating a positive mindset might come easily to you, it's not an easy thing to do when faced with dark thoughts. It likely won't be helpful to think of a positive future when the present feels so difficult that someone has thoughts of ending their life.
You're right, and depending on the circumstances too, you may not be in any position to guarantee that things are going to get better. You don't know necessarily what the circumstances are that brought them to that place. So promising something like that you can't deliver is disingenuous. And then B, like they were saying, that really may not resonate with someone who is feeling so hopeless, which is a feature that increases the vulnerability for the risk of suicidal thoughts. That just saying that it'll get better eventually, while maybe for some people it might actually be true that this is a passing thing and it will get better, that doesn't resonate with the person at that time, and they're not able to go to a place where they can reframe things accordingly, because otherwise I imagine they would have tried to do so already.
It may feel dismissive to ignore the hurting that is happening in the present. Instead, make sure to acknowledge the struggle that they've shared with you before offering positivity.
Another piece to that is, yes, it's important to acknowledge and empathize. So what Brené Brown talks about in a little helpful short about empathy is that you need to be willing to sit with the person in the pit that they are in. And all of these things about, positivity and trying to get them looking forward and looking ahead to when things are going to be better is you trying to pull them out of the pit when they don't see any way out. And so sometimes we need to go down there with them, sit with them in that, so that they can feel like there's somebody there to walk with them through that struggle that they're going through at the moment. And the difficult thing, of course, like they're alluding to in all of these suggestions so far, is that this takes an emotional toll on the person providing the empathy. And so yeah, absolutely, if you're willing to take on that burden, or if it gets thrust on you all of a sudden because someone just happened to come to you with that conversation, it's important for you to recognize what emotional impact that's having on you and what it's costing you, because this is a heavy discussion to have, this is a heavy conversation to enter into. And I absolutely applaud anyone who's willing to go through with that. It's just important to take care of yourself as well later on, because a lot of these warnings that they're giving us are coming out of a place of, I'm uncomfortable, so I want you to get over this as quickly as possible. And so we need to put that aside, our own discomfort in the moment, to be able to say, I will sit with you in this really uncomfortable conversation, in this hard conversation, so that we can really sit and wrestle and engage with your emotions that you're dealing with right now.
Number 3. Don't say, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Besides offering a cliche that most people have heard before, saying this may not be accurate or helpful. The permanence of death is common knowledge, but it may be distressing to think about when someone is already facing disturbing thoughts. Those who have suicidal thoughts may not feel like their problems are temporary either. It may be more helpful to offer a listening ear in order to understand their feelings instead of relying on trivial phrases and cliches.
Yeah, in regards to that point, basically what I liken it to is you're trying to argue them out of it. And offering logic at a time when they're so steeped in their emotions is generally not going to be super helpful. There are, again, not a hard and fast rule. There are going to be some people who might respond to that. And that's fair if you offer this counterpoint. Hey, Isaiah, I know this person that would absolutely respond well to that kind of reasoning and logic. But again, these are general principles of how to approach it. And most people are not going to be super responsive to you trying to argue them out of their emotions. For example, like if If we take this out of the realm of suicide, the next time you try to logic someone out of an argument when they're already heated and really angry at you, you tell me how well that goes.
Or, don't say that, or you're not serious. It can be frightening to hear about suicide, so it's understandable if you find yourself in disbelief at first. That being said, it can also be difficult to gauge how seriously someone is afflicted by suicidal thoughts, but they should always be taken seriously. It can feel invalidating when you confide in someone just to be told that you're not serious, especially when you let yourself be vulnerable by opening up about your mental health. Number 5.
Again, a lot of these come down to invalidating. And whether it's your intention or not, saying some of these things communicates to the other person, I don't take what you're saying seriously. And not in the sense of I don't believe you or I don't care about your emotions, but just in the sense of I am uncomfortable and I'm speaking out of my discomfort instead of engaging with your emotions. So that can be invalidating even if that's not what we intend.
Don't say, if you kill yourself, you'll go to hell. Serious conversations such as these are not the appropriate time to enforce your religious beliefs. This likely won't change the way they feel or erase any suicidal thoughts, nor will it encourage open communication. It's okay if you don't share the same beliefs as someone with suicidal thoughts, but remember how important it is to support them, rather than lecturing them during this very difficult time.
So we just did this podcast a couple weeks ago talking about spiritual abuse, and I think that some of these types of conversations fall into that category where spiritual authority is used to control and try to manage the right outcome for people. I think part of the difficulty coming from the faith background that would probably argue that suicide is a sin. Again, I can see where you might say, well, your spiritual destination, your forever destination, whether you're going to heaven or hell, is a much more important thing than your temporary life here. Which again, long view, fine, but also very invalidating in the moment, and also not the time to try to reason or logic or argue with someone out of their suicidal thoughts. And in this vein too, psychologically it doesn't make a lot of sense, because when you're thinking or acting on suicidal thoughts, you are in a place of impulsiveness. That's another risk factor for dying by suicide. So if you're preaching the long view and the long-term consequences of this action, people are not in a place to hear that when they are already thinking about an impulsive action. So just generally, again, this is about me feeling better, me making sure that you know the potential consequences of your actions, but still generally very hard for that to actually reach someone and have the desired effect of making that kind of statement.
6. Don't say, you need help, you should see a doctor. Even though seeking professional help for suicidal thoughts is very important, it's probably best not to suggest it quite like this. It's crucial to realize that they're taking steps towards asking for help just by confiding in you, and they'll feel supported if you acknowledge that. It is true that a medical professional will be the best resource for helping those with suicidal thoughts. That's no reason to be dismissive yourself. 7.
So I did a crisis intervention training called Assist a long time ago, but they talk about the safety stuff, which is like, hey, let's schedule an appointment with a doctor or a mental health professional. Let's get you in for continuing care. That is the stuff that you talk about after you've provided the mental health first aid in terms of the listening, the support, and then they've gotten to a point where they are considering what to do afterwards. Because in their mind initially, there is no afterwards. And so once you kind of walked through that conversation to the point where they're talking about, okay, so what comes next? What do I need to do now? That's when you might get to a point where you're talking about, hey, let's look together at some maybe crisis intervention services, or booking an appointment with a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a counselor, a social worker, whoever. That kind of long-term planning is not what you offer up initially. So again, not wrong by itself, but just like the placement of where that conversation happens is going to be very important also.
Don't say it's not that bad. The truth is, we can't always sympathize with situations we don't understand. We'll never get to walk in one another's shoes, so we'll never truly know what it is that someone else experiences. What might feel like nothing to one person might feel like the end of the world to the next. Even if the best we can do is listen, it's important not to downplay the severity of their emotions, whatever they may be.
Yeah, that's a good point. And a lot of this is generalizable to empathetic skills as well, empathetic listening. That, again, that's coming out of my perspective. This is not actually that bad. Like, why are you so worked up about it? Again, that last statement is not said out loud, that why are you so worked up about it? But it's implied and it's invalidating because they're telling us that it matters a lot. And so what I can do instead is I can ask questions to help me better understand why that matters so much to them. And I will get that maybe some people might argue that, hey, you're just supporting them in these thoughts, that encourages them to marinate in the suicidal thoughts even more, the depressive thoughts even more. But what's really powerful about validating and recognizing emotions is that once that's validated within that person, that can actually allow them to let go and start moving forward from those emotions. Emotions are temporary. So to that point about this is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, emotions do pass, but we need to allow them to do so when they've been acknowledged and validated. And so you can be a part of that process by doing some of these things that they're talking about, basically putting aside our own emotions in the moment to focus on theirs.
Don't say, "But others have it worse." Comparisons are rarely healthy, even though you may be well-meaning and simply wanting to remind them of the positives. It's not helpful to focus on others or to diminish the validity of their emotions in any way. By reminding them that others have it worse, you're essentially saying that they should not have suicidal thoughts because they're not in a worse position. This could make them feel guilty for their emotions, which is something no one should ever feel. If you have someone in your life who's depressed or seems suicidal and you want to be there for them, offer them a hug or a shoulder to cry on. Help them see that there is hope and that things can get better. Let them know you care about them and that they're not alone in this. You might not completely understand or know what to say, but it will mean a lot to them if you show them that they're not alone and that you truly care. If you know someone who may benefit from online counseling, we've partnered up with BetterHelp, an affordable online counseling platform that you can utilize. They're constantly striving to improve their services and terms and conditions. The link will be in the description box below. As always, thanks for watching.
Well, I've got my own video about BetterHelp, and a lot of people have already talked about influencers partnering with BetterHelp, so I'll let you all explore that on your own. The advice generally is good though. A lot of it is very basic, but also very fundamental in the sense of they are teaching you with all of these suggestions how to put aside your feelings in the moment, put aside your agenda for this other person, and to just focus on their emotions, which somewhat counterintuitively helps things to move forward for them. And in regards to that last suggestion, yeah, a lot of what these suggestions or things not to do, trying to suggest things to them, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, you don't need to think that way, you don't need to say this, all that kind of stuff, is trying to problem solve and move them forward, to push them forward and push their emotions out of the way so that they can move on with their life. And that is actually what's very counterproductive when it comes to dealing with any emotions, honestly, but particularly when it comes to suicide intervention. And again, of course, this is not your intro course to listen to this video or their video and then go jump out and start doing crisis interventions for everybody that you run across. This is for situations when like a friend comes to you and you have that relationship and you want to make that investment in their emotions and in their personhood. In reality, of course, you always have the option to call 988, 911 when things feel like they're just so out of control. You don't think this person can be safe with you. You don't think this person can be safe by themselves. And you need to have someone intervene in the moment. So I think that's an important thing to remember as well, that you as a layperson or even me as a professional, you're not the end all be all to this person's thoughts of suicide, that you can always call on 911, 988, get some more support and intervention when necessary. And it's recognizing if you are starting to feel out of your element, if you are starting to feel burned out in that moment, or that you can't put your thoughts and your feelings aside for that person, it's time to call in some help. Maybe call in another friend, maybe call in a 24/7 hotline, that kind of thing. Those are all different options, so don't ever feel like this has to begin and end with you. On the whole, compared to their analyzing people instantly video, I think their suggestions are more helpful here, which is good and important because this video has much deeper implications than just whether you can analyze somebody right away. So I think the suggestions in this video tend to be better than the other videos that I've kind of skimmed through on their channel. So thank you all so much for watching. Again, let me know in the comments below what some of your experiences have been with some of these suggestions, whether you've been on the receiving end of them or whether you've given them yourself or you try to avoid them in conversations with others. Tell me what you think about their suggestions and about my feedback about it. As always, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all next time.